I found a nice parable in the Samyuktagama scriptures, volume 33 of the Buddhist scriptures, breaking the world or breaking people into 4 types of horses. And I liked it because it has a little bit of a twist to it. So the scripture says that there are 4 kinds of horses: excellent ones, good ones, poor ones, and bad ones. The best horse will run slow and fast, right and left at the driver's will, before it sees the shadow of the whip. The second best will run as well as the first one does, just before the whip reaches the skin. The third one will run when it feels pain on its body. The fourth will run after the pain penetrates to the marrow of its bones. You can imagine how difficult it is for the fourth one to learn how to run. So these 4 kinds of horses, and we've got the best, the good, the not so good, and the bad. Immediately, all of us want to be the best horse, right? And we think that is the aim of our practice. I'm going to become the best horse. And interestingly enough, the teacher here in this book says that's ego. That's the first sign of trouble. And that quite often it's the best horses that take the longest to have their realization or to come to their understanding of true self, because they're confidently depending on themselves to do it. They're confident in their practice, they're confident in their love for God, they're confident in themselves. And this idea of a defined self, be it of any level, is our problem. This I is our trouble. And he goes on to say, when you are determined to do your spiritual practice with the great mind of Buddha, you will find that the worst horse is the most valuable one. In your very imperfections, you will find the basis for your firm, way-seeking mind. How is that possible? In your very imperfections, you'll find firm footing. It's this interesting thing called the implication of. If your identified self is not pleasing, is troublesome, is pain, then you can stand in a place and have that implicate the self which is not in pain, the self which is feeling pain. And the distinction becomes more clear, and you get a quicker picture, a quicker glimpse of that ever pure, ever peaceful self, because it contrasts so significantly with the pain of this identified self, with this lower mind, this small mind view of things. He says, those who can sit perfectly physically usually take more time to obtain the true way of Zen, the actual feeling of Zen, the marrow of Zen. But those who find great difficulty in practicing Zen will find more meaning in it. So I think that sometimes it is the best horse that may be the worst, and the worst horse can be the best. He says, if you think the aim of Zen is to practice is to train you to become one of the best horses, you're going to have a big problem. This is not the right understanding. If you practice your spiritual practice in the right way, it does not matter whether you are the best horse or the worst one. When you consider the mercy of the Buddha, how do you think the Buddha will feel about 4 kinds of horses? He will certainly have more sympathy for the worst one than for the best one. So this is quite lovely, because Buddhism is usually talked about as such a path of knowledge with no idea of God, and yet here we find the tender mercies of the Beloved coming into the picture. That if you know yourself to be the worst of horses, which actually in the end I think that's all there is the worst horses. What does it matter? You're either deluded or you're not deluded. You either know or you don't know. You're either realized or you're not realized. You know, it can come like the flash of lightning, Thakur says. A room can be dark for 1,000 years and you light a match. And he says, does the room light up little by little? He says, no, suddenly the room is illuminated. So that's how realization is talked about. So these gradations of qualities in the ego self are nonsense for the sake of the ego itself. They aren't helpful. What's helpful is to know the pain, not to associate with it, but to look at what it's pointing at, the part of you with no pain who recognizes pain. It's a very interesting trick of mind. It's a koan of mind. It's an experiential koan, as it were. It doesn't make sense, and yet it makes all the sense in the world. So this notion that being the worst makes you most reliant on grace. grace frees you from that wheel of samsara. Grace frees you from the pain of karma, really, and actually the identity with karma, because it helps you to identify with that oneness, with that loving nature, with that nature of knowing within you, that eternal self. So this isn't a race to be the best horse. This is a race to understand there are no horses.